Hello, my name is Tara Harrival, and I'm an attorney. I am the legal team director of the Oregon Habeas Task Force. We represent over 180 prisoners and jail detainees in cases against the Department of Corrections for failure to protect against COVID and inadequate medical care. We are here today to offer the perspectives of loved ones of prisoners who are just a sampling of folks who have been evacuated in the last few days in Washington County, the Coffee Creek Corrections, and then also several Salem area prisons that were evacuated. And we are here to discuss an ask for Governor Brown, which is in these extraordinary life-threatening conditions where prisoners across the state are subjected not only to the pandemic and the conditions in prisons which fail at this point to protect them from it, but now also wildfires and the conditions that will be described more today. We ask Governor Brown, and these family members who will be speaking today, ask Governor Brown to consider additional people for release in this extraordinary time. And we want to start first by acknowledging that Oregonians are suffering across the state catastrophic loss from wildfires and the pandemic. Oregonians in prisons and jails are the most vulnerable. They have such little political power that they rely on us and their loved ones to speak on their behalf. Incarceration is the punishment. It is not inadequate medical care. It is not COVID because of failure to protect, and it's not harm because of mismanaged evacuations from wildfires. Today, I speak for the Habeas Task Force and also in alliance with the ACLU of Oregon, the Partnership for Safety and Justice, the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic from Lewis and Clark. And I'm going to turn it over to a succession of several family members who are going to be speaking today on behalf of their loved ones and the experience of the last few days in the evacuations. I'm going to start with Lynn James Jackson. And questions, if you could please hold them to the end. We appreciate that.
Nix Patwai, that means good afternoon in my Yakima Nisqually Cowlitz language. I'm the wife of Takuma Jackson. Takuma has been incarcerated for the last 21 years, and in the last week, he has experienced a lot of adversity. He was diagnosed with Crohn's disease while he's been incarcerated, and he's on a medication called Remicade, which causes his immune system to be deficient. In the last week, he's experienced chest burning, throat burning, eyes burning because of the smoke and the soot that's coming into Oregon State Penitentiary. They have not closed the windows. Since the last several days, he said it's been a nightmare. He said that when they moved the other two prisons into Oregon State Penitentiary, fights broke out and an inmate was stabbed. At that point, pepper spray was sprayed on everyone in that block, along with the soot and the smoke, and they moved them out to the yard. However, they never got any medical attention. And because of the COVID, he's really concerned because the inmates are all on the floor in the activities area and the gym, 2 feet apart. I talked to him yesterday and his conditions have worsened. His chest is still burning, his throat is still burning, and his eyes are burning. He's unable to see out of his left eye at this time. He's asked for medical attention since this has happened the last week, and they said that they could not see him until today. At this time, I'm asking Kate Brown to consider not only his release, but other inmates' release because his clemency is on her desk. He did not expect this to happen, the COVID, the burning of the fires, and he has been suffering for the last week and without any medical attention with his throat, eyes, and everything burning. And there also within that week, he was not given breakfast or lunch. And with him having Crohn's disease, his nutrition is very important. So I'm asking Kate Brown to meet with us so that we can discuss alternatives to release some of these inmates and help them and their families get the healing they need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Chris Gillespie.
Hi, thank you for allowing us this platform to speak. My wife, Mara Teresa Gillespie, is housed at Coffee Creek. She is 2.5 months from being released, so her release date is coming up very soon. She is a medically vulnerable individual with several conditions ongoing. The virus has been on my mind since it started, and I've been in fear for her life and her health. They were told on Thursday, 11:30 a.m. to be ready to evacuate Coffee Creek. They didn't leave till 1 a.m. The bus trip took 3 hours. They waited another 2 or 3 hours on the bus before they could go into the facility. They waited another hour on the lawn outside waiting to get inside. And during this entire process of, I don't know, 10 hours, they were not allowed to use a restroom. Medications have not been handed out. A woman had a seizure because of this, and my wife witnessed that. It was about 7 minutes before the staff was able to get to the woman and help her. They didn't eat for nearly 24 hours in between the evacuation and the time they ate next. And they've actually, the building that they are now in has more smoke in it than the one that they left. The men displaced are now sleeping on the floor in another area of the prison. So the conditions are horrific. I understand the nature of the evacuation and the necessity of it, but the risk of COVID-19 is even more prevalent and worse than it was before. Kate Brown, I really implore you to consider more releases of inmates to lower the prison population and to eliminate the ability of the virus to spread, or at least to mitigate it. Again, thank you for your time and the platform you've given us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mark Bogle. Can't hear you. Try talking again.
Okay, my name is Mark Bogle. My wife, Lori Bogle, was incarcerated in POC. She was at the Coffee Creek in the minimum section of the prison. Since this DOC evacuation, my wife, Lori, has suffered trauma in several different ways. On Thursday at 1 p.m., my wife, Lori Bogle, was told to prepare for evacuation. She was given a sack lunch and her evening dose of medication at 6:30 that evening. Was loaded onto a bus at midnight, sat in the parking lot until 1. The woman traveled 3 hours over to Madras, sat on a bus for 2 more hours without a bathroom break. And that was a total of 6 hours for her. She hadn't had a meal from 7 p.m. Thursday until noon on Friday. My wife is hypoglycemic. She also suffers from seizures, and she has a medical condition that gives her low blood platelets. So she has to have her regimen of medication and at the same time every day to keep her running properly, if you will. Went from 6:30 Thursday to 1 p.m. Friday with only half of her dose of medication. And what I'm asking today is I'm asking that the trauma for the women and the men inmates that are the suffering that they're suffering now due to the COVID-19 and the fires. I asked that Kate Brown would consider releasing more inmates, male and females. Take a look at what the community has for them out here. My wife has served 71 months on a 110-month sentence. She's ready to come home and to be reunited with her family, her grandkids that she's never met, and to move on from this. I just asked Kate Brown that she would meet with us or meet with our families and take a look at releasing more people into our community. I love my wife, and I've been away from her for a long time. I'm ready to have her home with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rod Richardson.
Hello. Having a family member, Tammy Sabler, in prison is very hard for any family, but knowing there are issues and there's nothing you can do, it makes you even feel more helpless. When COVID hit the women's prison, the prison was already at almost 100% capacity, and they were moving bunks closer. They were moving COVID patients with other prisons to Coffee Creek, and they had men and women housed on the same units. During the recent evacuation, Tammy sat on a bus for 8.5 hours. Everyone was told by the officers to go to the bathroom in their pants. Women were peeing in cups and throwing tampons and feces out the windows of the buses because they could not leave the bus to use the bathroom. They never received their bedding for over 24 hours. Tammy had to lay on a metal bed, not sleeping. Tammy has PTSD, and her anxiety was high as I ever seen it, with a headache and a sick to her stomach. As she explained her story, I was beyond upset, and I was hurt. There was nothing I could do to help her. She didn't have clothes or towels to even shower. They're putting maximum and minimum prisoners in the same areas. The smoke air quality was just as bad at the new prison as it was at the other prison, and her lungs with constant headaches. Being moved to Deer Ridge, there was no hand sanitizer. They weren't required to wear masks. And there was nothing really to help protect them from COVID. Nurses didn't switch gloves between patients. There was not even, the area was not even clean before they moved into the area. There was dirt and food everywhere. Tammy Saylor has complex medical issues that need to be taken care of. One of the medical issues could cause her to die without proper medical attention. Tammy meets all the criteria for nonviolent crime and has over a year clear conduct and minimum. She is due to be out in December 21. She needs medical attention immediately for her issues. Please give her an opportunity to get proper health care by letting her and others like her out that need help and attention.
Thank you. Thank you. These 4 voices speak for so many in this state. There are so many people who wish to have the governor's ear, especially at this time. We want to open it up for questions, and we also have additional statements and can provide additional contacts. I can be a contact as well for anybody who would like. So if there are questions, go ahead. No questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, this is Nick Budnick, Portland Tribune.
Hi, Nick.
Hi there. I'm wondering, have you made this request to the governor's office privately prior to this public request?
We have requested on a number of different prisoners' behalfs over the last few months to be considered for release. A number of them, as said by Lynn James Jackson, have clemency petitions already on the governor's desk. Yes, the answer is yes.
I mean, in relation to the wildfire smoke?
Oh, nothing specific quite yet. We're all in process with our group of getting more formalized statements and requests before the governor. This is one of them.
Great, thanks.
Other questions?
Can you talk about the governor's report on that was issued about potential releases? Could you go into more detail about what that report said and whether you think it's been implemented?
Sure. In April 2020, the governor requested that the Department of Corrections provide her with a report on what it would take to implement coherent social distancing. And the Oregon Department of Corrections provided a report that was extremely coherent and had very practical advice, and reported to the governor that it would take a 40% reduction in the prisoner population, which is like several thousand, to implement true social distancing. Another kind of recommendation or point that the report made was the governor could also stop the gates and not incarcerate further. We've seen some of these implemented in other states, California to a degree, also Washington State has made some fairly significant releases, but the governor has not. The governor has to date released 57 prisoners. We don't know why, or if there's a secondary plan, but certainly that is not going to implement true social distancing measures. It cannot in the facilities as they are.
Are you planning anything else other than this public request? Are you planning further legal actions that refer to the wildfire smoke, or are those options limited? Or
Well, I expect there probably will be legal actions, whether they're with us or others, regarding the behavior, the mismanagement of the evacuation. And I want to say, it appears as if there wasn't a plan for this evacuation. It appears as if it was extremely haphazard and ad hoc, and the harm that has arisen is significant. In our cases, we have what are called habeas corpus medical cases. They're based on constitutional claims. And those cases are 180 and building every week. And we will be incorporating for the people who were impacted by this evacuation as factual information for the court to consider the ongoing deliberate indifference to our clients as exhibited in this recent evacuation.
and could you talk a little bit about the prevalence of COVID that's been detected so far, and how do you think that is an accurate representation of the situation right now in prison?
Do you mean since the evacuations?
I mean, in general, before the wildfire and I guess in light of the evacuations.
Well, because there's not comprehensive testing, we don't know. We have major outbreaks at several prisons currently, but the testing is something like 3% of the prison population. So without coherent, really widespread testing, there's no way to know, given that many can carry the disease, as we know, and not have symptoms. But given the outbreaks that have been at SRCI, Snake River in Malheur, and now at Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution and Two Rivers Correctional Institution and the Oregon State Penitentiary, and then what will come from this super spreader event that was the evacuations and the prisoners from the 3 facilities in the Salem area that were dumped into Oregon State Penitentiary. With no apparent concern for COVID protections at all. It's same for the women who were dumped into the Deer Ridge facility. No concerns, no apparent steps taken there as well. So we're going to see an outbreak or outbreaks now from the conduct over the last week.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions.
There are questions coming in on the streaming page.
Oh.
I think one big question is that anybody who is a member of the public right now who is listening or watching, they want to know what they can do to help all of these people affected by what's happening.
Write the governor and ask her to release more people. And ask her to release people, all the people who are medically vulnerable within 6 months of release, who have nonviolent crimes as a first cut. There's a lot of those folks, and let's get them out.
When you say a lot, how many roughly?
Well, I don't know the whole list. I do know the last list that we are aware of was 817 prisoners who were determined by the Department of Corrections around April to be medically vulnerable. And those were only designated medically vulnerable prisoners. There are other categories, and I don't know what those are because that information is not public, but certainly anecdotally among our prisoner clients, there are many, probably 40 to 50% could fit into categories that the governor has said she is considering or what might consider as the first cut.
Thanks.
Amanda, are there other questions?
Yeah, another question came in on the YouTube page, and the question is, can we speak to the condition of inmates who are currently fighting wildfires? Do we have any clients who are currently fighting wildfires, and do we know anything about their condition?
Well, we do. We don't have a lot, but we've gotten some reports that they were fighting fires, at least in Deer Ridge and Coffee Creek folks, and they would come back and have to be in this just appalling prison filled with smoke. So that's the condition for the prisoners who are tasked with being firefighters in this time that we have heard of.
Another question came in, which is, and this is from, I think, Maxine at the Oregonian. She's watching our YouTube stream. She asked us, have inmates who have been moved have they been given any indication about how long they're going to be at this different facility?
We have been told vaguely it'll be probably a few more days. They moved a couple of the populations already out of Oregon State Prison. They moved everyone but the Oregon State Correctional Institution population back to their original facilities over the last few days. Coffee Creek, I can say they're starting to schedule phone calls for the week of the 21st. That's all I know. Other questions?
I don't see any more in the YouTube stream, Tara, but if any others come in, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to close it up then. Thank you all for being here. And again, if you would like additional statements, if you would like statements and contacts from the family members who spoke today, please contact me. We're on the presser. And if you'd like to speak with any attorneys from my office who are working on this project or myself, let me know and we'll be happy to set something up. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.